Above the storms of passion, the murmurs of self-will. What's that a quote from? Correct. It's from the third verse of the most difficult hymn in the organist's repertoire. It's a hymn which has given me many nightmares over the years. So today I face my greatest fear. Have you noticed how often we misuse the word unique? We say something is very unique when what we actually mean is it's very interesting. If something's unique, then it's a one-off, so the concept of something being very unique is nonsense. So where am I going with this? Well, today I'm in the village of Sandy Lane in Wiltshire. And I'm heading to a church which is in fact unique because it's apparently the only church in England which was built as a place of worship out of timber and with a thatched roof. So it would be interesting to see it. But my focus today is on one specific hymn, and it's the most difficult hymn ever composed in my opinion. It takes me back all the way to when I was 16, when I played for my first funeral service, and you can imagine I was absolutely petrified. And when I looked at the list of hymns a good couple of weeks before, I saw that one of them was this particular hymn and to this nightmare tune. And then when I arrived at the church, which was St. Thomas's Church in Salisbury, I met the funeral director for the first time. And his name was Mr. Newman. He was very extrovert with a very thick Dorset accent, and he had a reputation for being very relatable. He could tell a story about anybody's life and make it interesting. And I met him and shook him by the hand, and I was absolutely terrified, and I said, I'm just learning. And he went, learning the ropes. And I said, yeah. And when we got to the service, of course in a funeral you have a lot of waiting during the eulogy and the prayers, so you become even more nervous and you get quite cold as well when you really need to warm up the digits playing hymns on the organ. And we got to this hymn and I started playing and I just about got through the play over, but then things began to fall to pieces. And I'll never forget it because it was an awful experience, to be perfectly honest. And I dreaded it every time this hymn came back up again in a service. Unfortunately, it's extremely popular because it's a really good hymn. So let's see if we can do it justice today in the village of Sandy Lane. More than a decade has passed since that rather frightful day. But I suppose experience is the best way to learn. It's just as well then that the church I'm heading to is more like a practice room than a performance venue. But nonetheless, I think you're going to find it fascinating. I bet you were not expecting to see this today. This is unlike the Salisbury organist. A thatched church from the 1890s. How modern. I'm afraid to say that this church is normally locked because this area is quite remote. But of course, I have permission to go inside, so I can show you St. Mary and St. Nicholas in Sandy Lane. That certainly ranks very highly on the scale of church door opening sounds, and it's what you'd expect really in a building built almost entirely of wood. This church has 6-inch walls with sawdust stuffed inside them for insulation, and it is, of course, unique. You've never seen a church like this before. It's like a country cottage. There was a big problem in the 1870s when this parish got a new vicar because there was no specific church in this little tiny hamlet of Sandy Lane, so services had to take place in somebody's house. But this was the solution. It was first used for worship on the 6th of December 1892, which is St. Nicholas's Day. And it's been in use ever since. There are still 2 services a month in this church, I understand. It's tiny, isn't it? The architect who built it absolutely hated what he called the hideous iron church buildings which were being used at the time. But what he produced here is quite amazing, isn't it? I've got to say, it's much nicer inside than outside. It's quite dark with that huge thatched roof covering the whole church, but once you get in here, it's a real sanctuary. It's very homely, actually, as you'd expect. One thing that just completely baffles me, and I'm just going to start talking about it right now, is the pipe organ, because it's far too big for this church. It's quite funny, isn't it, to see such a massive instrument on its side in such a small building. Let me tell you the story of that organ. There was a harmonium here. In fact, one of the pictures somewhere shows that instrument. But this was brought here from Chitto Church, just down the road, when that church became redundant in the 1980s. The vicar apparently arranged for this organ to be brought here, and one of the bell ringers fixed up a lorry, and a team of the congregation brought this instrument here and reassembled it, which is amazing, isn't it? Because think of all the component parts of this that they had to rebuild. It's also a really good organ. It's a Bevington organ. Bevington was quite a famous organ builder. He built plenty of organs in London, but also in Australia and South Africa. There's no date on this organ, and it may be the work, well, it's almost certainly the work of Henry Bevington's sons, because he died in 1850, and I'm sure this instrument dates to after then. Let's see, of course, there we are, first class medal in the Paris exhibition of 1855, and a prize medal in the International exhibition of 1862. This firm were very proud of their achievements. With that in mind, why don't we put it to the test? First thing I will say about this instrument is the room is acoustically dead, so it's slightly strange having a church organ in here. So there's no echo, so what you hear is the note, and then absolutely nothing else. It's like a practice room. It's slightly daunting. Have you ever heard bagpipes? Do you notice that when the note stops, it's almost more jarring than when it started? Because there's no echo, because bagpipes are normally performed outside. It's a bit like that, really. Slightly weird. Quite interesting though, isn't it? And I'm so glad the organ was saved from a redundant church. It's also in quite good condition. Probably a lot of that is to do with the fact that it's a good organ in the first place. The one thing that terrifies me though, given that this video is about the most terrifying hymn ever written, is the fact that the pedal board is tiny. I was hoping to have a pedal board to help me out, but you know, it's so small that I'd rather not use it. Those are called pull downs. They simply pull down the notes from the keyboards. So the organ sounds exactly the same, played by somebody who doesn't use the pedals, as somebody who does. Because they're so small, it's so easy to press the wrong note with your feet. I don't know who they were designed for. Maybe elves. But they certainly wouldn't work with my shoes, so I'm just going to play with my hands today. Oh Jesus, I have promised to play that hymn better next time. If there's one thing which is a challenge, it's playing that tune. If there's another, it's playing it badly to many people all around the world on the internet. You may not have noticed, but I was playing quite slowly, quite ponderously. It sounded quite elementary. You could hardly sing to that. After the first couple of verses, you'd be out of breath. It's too slow. There's nothing wrong with the organ at all. It's just that because the pedal board is so small, you can't just sit down and play the hymn. As an organist, I'm used to using my feet. That's just natural. If you can't play with your feet, you can't quite get all of the notes because some of them are quite far apart. And furthermore, if you want the organ to have more power and more depth, you need to play some of the notes an octave lower to engage the bass pipes of the organ. So if you're just playing with your hands, there is some mental and physical gymnastics going on through every single bar of that music. You're constantly adjusting the music, you're choosing which notes to leave out, which notes are important. The left hand in particular is jumping all over the place. Just watch again. So as you can see, this hymn is not as serene to play as it is to listen to, and that's part of the reason why it's so hard. So why is it written to be so difficult? Well, hymns can be written in two different ways. Either they're written in harmony or they're written in unison. If a hymn tune is written in harmony, it means that the organist is playing what a four-part choir would be singing. Because a choir needs to sound quite cohesive, those parts will often be quite close together on the stave, and they won't be too complicated because otherwise the choir wouldn't be able to sing it. That is method of composition number 1, but number 2 is called unison. That means that everybody in the choir would just be singing one part, and that would be the tune. Jerusalem is a classic example of this method. Melody on a single line, with a specially written organ part for the accompaniment. Wolvercote, today's hymn tune, is composed in exactly the same way, and that's part of the reason it's so difficult to play on a small organ, especially one without usable pedals. I did go to another church with a bigger pedal board so that I can explain this to you much better. But before we do that, I just want to pause for a moment because it would be nice to play a hymn tune at Sandy Lane which does work really well because it's written in harmony. That means I don't have to make any adjustments to the music. I simply sit down, play it, and it all falls neatly under my fingers. It's a hymn called "There is a Green Hill Far Away." There is a green hill far away, composed in simple 4-part harmony and therefore much easier to play on a small instrument. But for contrast, I journeyed back into Salisbury and to a village we all know well on this channel. This is Lover, and it's here on a larger organ that we can return to the subject of today's video. I'm going to cut to the chase here because I simply want to show you how much better this hymn sounds when you play it on an organ with a proper full-size pedal board. That means that my feet are playing the bass line, so there's less to do for my hands. So my hands really appreciate that. Just listen to the opening verse of "O Jesus, I Have Promised." now I feel more at home. So we have a really good acoustic, a really good fluty and open diapason kind of chorus sound, but also we have a pedal board, which means that my feet can do what they want to do, which is actually play. However, this hymn is still not easy. First of all, imagine playing this for a service. The introduction is the bit where nobody sings, but in this hymn tune it's all too easy to play an instant wrong note. Look at the pedal part. It starts up high, then it goes down by step, which is really hard to do with your feet. And then all the time after that, it's dancing all over the place. Sometimes there are quaver notes, which are half the length of a normal note in a hymn tune. So it's all too easy to make a mistake. But here's the other problem. If you want to play that tune really smoothly, you need to employ a technique called finger substitution. That means that different fingers play on the same note while it's being held down. So it helps make the music more smooth. It means that you play a note and then you can change the finger so that your whole hand position can be adjusted mid-note. And that helps you to play more smoothly. The only way I can show you is by slowing down the music so that you can see. Just look at the way my fingers slide over those notes. I do it instinctively now, but it means that I can change the position of my hand while I'm playing to help me reach the next note. It's a particular keyboard playing technique, but you have to use it so much in this hymn tune that it becomes extremely complicated even when you're playing with your feet as well. Let me show you the next big issue with this hymn. It is a genius tune, but there are lots of massive leaps in the melody. Leaps tend to be more expressive, more emotional than stepwise movement, but leaps are also harder to play and harder to sing. Those leaps are, however, the artistry, the genius of this hymn tune, of course. It may be difficult to sing, but it's brilliant to sing. And when you look at the words, you can see why the composer would be so inspired to write something that expressive. Oh, let me hear thee speaking in accents clear and still, above the storms of passion, the murmurs of self-will. Of course, I will end this video with Wolvercote played in full. It's been a meditation on the most challenging and dangerous hymn tune of all time. But first, do remember to click on the subscribe button if you're watching for the first time. It doesn't cost you a penny. However, you gain so much, you will be all the richer for clicking subscribe, because it means that you'll be one of the first to see my next video, whenever that may be. I wonder. You can also support me financially if you'd like to by clicking on the donations link just underneath this video. If you click on that link, it takes you to the Salisbury Organist donations page, and from there you can leave a small contribution if you'd like to. Thank you so much for your help. So without further ado, it's time to settle the score with this beautiful hymn tune. Oh Jesus, I have promised. Thank you so much for watching. Cheerio.